turn the other cheek. Here's what it says. But I say unto you that ye resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also. Now it's very specific. It doesn't say if they hit you on one cheek, turn them the other. It doesn't say that. It says if they smite you on the right cheek, turn the other one. Okay, why? Why does this make a difference? Why does knowing anything about the culture tell you something about that? Okay, well think about it. You again take a right-handed person, because most people are, and if I'm facing somebody and I'm going to hit them on the right cheek with my right hand, how am I going to do it? My right hand is facing the left cheek. The only way I can do it is to backhand them. Well, the backhanded slap is an extreme insult that says that we are not equals. I am better than you are. And so what the Scripture is saying is don't resist evil. Don't get yourself in trouble and have this Roman kill you because you're resisting. You're living in a tough culture. But preserve what dignity you can. Don't accept the backhanded insult. Turn the other cheek and say, treat me like an equal, and slap me that way, and I may have to take it, but I'm going to take it as an equal, not an inferior. And all of a sudden, instead of saying, this is a wimpy person that's just going to wait to get beat up, it's somebody who's saying, I'm going to stand up for myself. That's a huge difference in meaning. So the context is going to make a big difference in how we understand texts. Now, here's what I want to do. I want to say, let's assume that the Book of Mormon took place in Mesoamerica. We'll assume that John Sorensen and others have gone through and they've done all of the analysis and that this thing seems to work. And it does. It's really a pretty good correlation. Now we need to go to the next step, and we need to say, if the Book of Mormon took place there, does that cultural context tell us something about the Book of Mormon that otherwise we might not know? Can we learn something more than what's in the text based on the context? Let me give you a couple of them that come straight from the geography. In Mesoamerica, one of the things that lines up very nicely with the way the Book of Mormon is written, the Book of Mormon says that the Nephites are going to have to come in somewhere in the Southland, that somewhere up in the northern area you're going to have Jaredites, and that Mulekites are going to come in where the Jaredites are, and then they're going to come somehow probably up the river to get to Zarahemla, and they found Zarahemla. And then the Nephites come up from this location, and they find the Mulekites who are there in Zarahemla. And so we have a story in the Book of Mormon that gives us some very interesting spatial relationships. It says that you've got to have one culture here, you've got to have another old culture, older one up here, and somehow something up here's got to move down, these guys have got to move up. Then it tells us a couple of other things. It says it's got to happen somewhere around 200 BC. And the other thing it tells us is that when the people from the Nephites moved up into Zarahemla, that they couldn't understand the Mulekites. The Mulekites had lost their language. Now, here's what we never think about this, and this is where putting on the eyes of the historian says there's something wrong in the text. How is it that the Mulekites lost their language in 400 years? This should not happen. Let's see, how old is the United States? How long have we been around? Give us 300 years. Okay, not 400, 300. How many of you can read what the Founding Fathers wrote in the late 1700s? We can understand it, not a problem. How many of you can understand a document written in England at that same time? Now, we were split off from them. And, I can probably still go to England and understand pretty much everything except bonnets and boots. But in that length of time, you do not have a common language that becomes mutually unintelligible. It doesn't happen. But it did in the Book of Mormon. Why? Here's why. If you know the geography, you know what happened. First of all, if you have somewhere around 30 people who come in and they land in the coast of Guatemala, they move inland, they've got to figure out how to dress themselves, they've got to figure out where to find the clay to make pots, they have to figure out what the right food is to grow and how to grow it because it's completely different foodstuffs, it's a different climate zone than where they came from. And there's a whole bunch of people who've already figured that out. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to learn from the people who are already there. This is the normal way that you have cultures merging. And when you have a brand new culture with only about 30 people, and they go into a culture that's got 2,000 or 3,000 that already knows what they're doing, guess which way the cultural information flows? It doesn't go from the Nephites to whoever else it was. It goes from them to the Nephites, because they're the ones who need to know. It also happens that even if you retain a scholarly language, that the common spoken language is the one that's spoken by the majority of the people. Okay, here's another one for you. What language do you speak? English. How long were the French in charge of England? A very long time. Long enough that we do have quite a few loan words from French and English. But the French court, there was a French-speaking court for a long time. It was the language of the higher-ups and the rulers in England. And we speak English. Why? Most people did. So what's going to happen with the Nephites when they come into this population is, even if they retain as a scholarly language whatever it is that they had as Hebrew at the time, they're going to end up on a daily basis speaking the language of the people around them. And if they come into that area down here in the south, they're going to speak some version of Mayan. That's what was there. Now, up at the top, the Jaredite level, in that area, they spoke at the time of the Jaredites a language that they call Miche-Soke, which is a combination of two words. What happened is there was one language and it split into two daughter languages. One of them was Miche and one of them was Soke. They didn't know what to call the combination of the two, so they called it Miche-Soke. So here's the Jaredites up here speaking Miche-Soke. At some point in time, there's a division, and there's an eastern and western division, and the Soke speakers are starting to move more in this direction. Mulekites come in, and they're up here in the Sokean speaking area. Then you have them coming up the Grijalva River Valley. Well, it just so happens in Mesoamerica that about 200 BC, Sokean speakers moved up the Grijalva River Valley up into that area. And there's evidence that some Maya speakers came up there as well in about 200 BC. What's going to happen if a Maya speaker and a Soke speaker get together? They will not understand each other because they're completely different languages. This is not French and Spanish. This is not Spanish and Italian. This is Basque and German. They're simply not going to be able to understand each other. So if you go to the history of what's happening in that location, exactly at the time the Book of Mormon says these people are meeting here and they can't understand each other, the history is telling us that right at that time, Soke speakers have moved into this area, Maya speakers come up, and if that were to happen, they wouldn't understand each other. So all of a sudden we can explain why the Mulekites lost their language. The Nephites lost theirs as well, but we always think it's the other guy that lost it. If you ask anybody nobody in the United States speaks with an accent except the other guy. Okay? And that's exactly what happens. The Nephites are going to say, hey, we understand each other, but we don't understand these guys. So that's what happened. So another one from geography. How is it that geography can explain other things that happen in the Book of Mormon? Here's another interesting one that solves the riddle of a very stupid story if you look at it through the eyes of the historian. If you look at it through the eyes of the historian, we have a really strange story when the people of Limhi are under the thumb of the Lamanites, and they're down here in city of Nephi area. They've left Zarahemla, they've come down here, and they've said, boy, this is really tough, it's time to get out of here. The Lamanites have really put heavy taxes on us, we want to get out of here. What we really want to do is ask these guys in Zarahemla to get an army and come down here and liberate us. That's what we want. And so they said, let's send a party to go find them. Now, here's the strange thing about it. It was their grandparents who had come from Zarahemla down here. Zarahemla's on the Sidon River. And so what they did is they come across the Sidon, they go up to the headwaters, they come down, they're back down into the valley of Nephi. And so when somebody says, okay, we're going to have to find Zarahemla, how do you find it? What's the map? How do you get there? The people knew, because it really wasn't that long ago that they'd done it. The grandparents had actually done this. And so they had the instructions. They said, if you want to find Zarahemla, go find the River Sidon, go down the River Sidon, you'll see it on the left. This is not hard. And these guys lost themselves. They missed it. They could not find it.